Is the phrase, "it's the thought that counts," in fact true? Hi, Dr. Lee here with another video on ethics and philosophy, and this time we'll be taking a look at Kant and deontology. So, most human actions have an intent or purpose. When I help an old lady cross the street, there might be many reasons for why I might do this. The action of helping an old lady cross the street looks the same, but the reason or the intent or the purpose might be very different. And of course, there are some actions like a reflex or a reaction that doesn't have the same quote-unquote intent or purpose that we're talking about here. But for the most part, most actions have an intent. And this intent is what Kant calls a maxim. The maxim is the intent or purpose that precedes the action. And in Kantian ethics or in deontology, we look at the maxim to know what drives the moral action and essentially what determines whether the action is morally good or morally bad. So why did I help the old lady cross the street? Was it because of out of a desire for keeping her safe? Or was it merely to look good in front of my friends? The action is the same, but according to Kant, only one of them is a morally good action and the other one is a morally bad action. So if the maxim is morally good, then the action is morally good. If the maxim is morally bad, then the action is morally bad. So what happens when I have good intentions but a bad result? I want to be a good friend, so I throw a surprise birthday party for my friend. Plans are set, things are going well, the moment of surprise is upon us, and my friend walks in, and everyone yells surprise. My friend is shocked and has a heart attack. Obviously, that is a bad result, but does that change whether the action of throwing a surprise birthday party to be morally good or morally bad? For Kant, he would say no. While the result is bad, that does not change whether the action was morally good or morally bad, because the intent is what determines whether an action is morally good or morally bad, regardless of the result. Yes, the result was terrible, but that doesn't change the morality of the action. The intent was good, so the action is morally good, even if there's a bad result. So, what determines whether an intent or a maxim is morally good or morally bad? And here, this is where Kant introduces what he calls the categorical imperative. And he does this with three formulations. The first formulation goes like this: act only in a way in which that maxim you would desire at the same time to become universal law. So, think about your maxim. Think about your reasons for why you're going to do this. If you can't desire that this maxim would become universal for everyone in all times, then that means you shouldn't be doing it. Essentially, this formulation of the categorical imperative is saying that you don't get to prioritize yourself. You don't get to say to others, this maxim is off limits for you, but I will go ahead and do it. The second formulation, Kant says, to treat others as ends in themselves and never as mere means. So we use people all the time. We need people to do things for us. When I take my kids down to McDonald's to get soft serve, I use the cashier for my ends of getting some dessert. So we're down at McDonald's. I order my soft serve for myself and for my kids, and of course, the soft serve machine is broken. Well, how do I treat this person? Does it change? For Kant, he says no. I treat the person as ends in themselves, as a fellow human being. Their worth is within themselves as an ends, because they are a fellow human being. Their worth is not contingent upon whether they could get me what I want. So even though the soft-serve machine is broken, even though my kids are not throwing a fit, even though nobody's getting ice cream today, that does not change how I treat this person, because again, their worth and how I treat them is in themselves and not merely what they can get me. The third categorical imperative, Kant says, to act through your maxims so that you could become a legislator of universal law. So imagine someone following you for 24 hours. And while they're following you, they're recording your every moment. And while creepy and invasive that may be, think about your actions and your maxims for that day. Would you do something that you probably don't usually do but will do now? Are you not going to do something that you would usually do but you are doing it now because of the extra scrutiny? What Kant is trying to get at is that if you could live a way in which you don't care that someone's watching your maxims and whatnot, essentially, well, one, your life would be drastically different. But two, you are also then living in a way in which your maxims can become a legislator for universal law. It would be a radically different life. When we think rationally and ethically about our maxims, we are living according to what Kant calls the good will. So, what's the ultimate good in life? As a Chicagoan, the answer is obviously a Chicago-style hot dog, right? While I'm eating this hot dog, it's the best. While someone hands me a second and a third one, it's still the best. But come fourth or fifth, I've hit my limit and that same hot dog is no longer good. Essentially, the goodness of this Chicago-style hot dog needs qualifications. It's only good when I'm hungry. It's only good when it's a real Chicago-style hot dog. It's only good when it doesn't have ketchup, whatever. The idea is that if something is good when it has qualifications, or if something is good only when certain qualifications are met, is it in fact truly all that good? For Kant, there's only one thing that's good without qualification. There's only one thing that's good all the time. And that one thing Kant calls the good will. The good will is your ability to know your moral duty and live accordingly out that moral duty in life. Being a moral person and living an ethical life is always good and is good in and of itself without any qualifications, right? There are no qualifications needed for a morally lived out life to be good and to remain good. And this brings us to our last point of moral worth. Anyone with kids will tell you that you have to teach them to say thank you, right? It doesn't come natural. You have to compel them to do it. You have to teach them to do it. So when my child says thank you, that action has no moral worth. It is merely repeating what I told them to do. Even years later, when they've grown up and they say thank you, if it is merely out of habit or merely because of a custom, that saying of thank you too has no moral worth. Only when somebody learns the concepts of gratitude and appreciation and saying thank you out of the goodwill does that action carry moral worth. So, I know we covered a lot, but I hope this helps you understand Kant and deontology. Let me know in the comments below and come back for future videos.